Welcome everybody to the situational awareness scenario. I'm so excited to jump in and start enumerating this machine just like I would in an actual red team assessment. It's fun going through all the RTFM commands, but just being able to jump and kind of talk through and discover is a lot more exciting. So let's go ahead, let's get everything ready here. Let me drag over our window so we can kind of expand our view. And then, like I mentioned, we got a callback from Phyllis Snyder here. She is on a workstation connected to a big domain. I've already mentioned all this, so hopefully the domain stuff makes sense to you. We're gonna get a little bit better understanding. There's a few things I'm not gonna check purely because we're gonna cover them in future videos. Some of those things are gonna be file enumeration. We actually have entire sections dedicated to that. And then I'll go through it in the scenario later on. And then domain enumeration. Again, we have a lot of domain commands that are gonna be used to enumerate this box and other things. But for right now, I'm gonna go through and enumerate processes and see what's running on the system. And we're gonna see if we can get a better handle of what Phyllis is up to. So let's just dig in. Let's start looking at these processes and other things and see what she's running. So first things first here, let's run our task list, whack V. Let's walk through this. So scrolling up, one of the first things I wanna point out is that you'll see the privilege owner of the process is going to be NA or Phyllis Snyder. Now, I want you to think through what this means. I've taught a lot of classes in the past, and usually this is a point in which I'm like, all right, what do we think? You know, why is one NA and one says Chicago Phyllis Snyder? And that's because Phyllis Snyder is a basic user. And basic users have a lot of restrictions put in place. And one of those restrictions in this situation is Phyllis Snyder cannot see information about other processes. It can see other process names, but in this example, the computer is actually running a process. So it's saying, no, Phyllis, you can't see the owner of this process. That's why it says NA. So if we did have administrative credentials, you would see a little bit different information. You would see who actually owns that process. And I want to follow up and talk about this specifically again. This is a telltale giveaway that Phyllis Snyder is actually an account that exists in Active Directory. In the previous video, we talked through Active Directory overview and how all these accounts are centrally managed. Well, what domain do you think Phyllis Snyder's a part of? Well, she's a part of the Chicago domain. And you can see it right there. Windows typically represents usernames as the domain /username. If you saw another user logged in with a local non-domain account, there wouldn't be anything there. It would just say Phyllis Snyder. So a little bit more information we can understand from this task list. Another cool thing about task list is it gives you Windows title information. So if you look here, Chicago Phyllis Snyder actually has a PDF open and one more page. If you look, she actually has it open in Microsoft Edge. So it looks like she does not have an Adobe Reader type product installed. So she's opening PDFs in Edge. Now, think through the ramifications of this. If you want to use some type of Adobe PDF exploit, probably potentially not going to work if it's opened in Edge. So we're going to keep looking through. It looks like I said, she has a PDF open. Here's another giveaway here, regedit.exe. We covered administrative binaries. This is one of them. If a user has this open, they're actively looking through registry keys. So kind of be careful, right? You want to be careful creating any keys because they may find them. They may be looking at those keys on the system. And not only do you have regexe here, but you also have registry editor kind of in that verbiage over on the side. So we're going to keep scrolling down. Tons of Microsoft Edge windows are open. Tons of Microsoft Edge processes are open. And I believe every new tab opens a new Edge process. You can see here WordPad. And again, you can see the file name, which is awesome. So let's say they had some type of text file open in WordPad and the title was mypasswords.text, right? Don't assume that that's not going to happen. Don't assume all your users are practicing perfect security standards. Password managers are really popular, but there are still credentials to be had in files. So please keep your eyes peeled, keep doing your enumeration and your situational awareness. So let's keep scrolling through here. FastElm, I wonder what that is, right? That's the binary we had Phyllis run or that I put on the box and executed. And then finally, you can see our actual task list here. This is the task list we just ran. Kind of cool. So now we have a little bit better handle of what Phyllis is running on this machine. She has PDFs open, Edge open, regedit is open. Some things we should kind of be concerned with. I do want to end this video though, I've mentioned a few times that she is a basic user. A couple things I want to enumerate. So we're going to go over Active Directory enumeration commands later in the videos, but just a little sneak peek here. If you do a net user, Phyllis Snyder, whack domain, you're going to get all of her domain information right here. And look how helpful this is. You get her actual username she logs into Windows with, her full name with a little space in between. You get the password last set time, when that password expires, is it changeable? Domain group information. And this is where you really need to kind of focus your attention. Is she an administrator? Is she, a systems like database engineer? In this example, she's not. She's just a basic domain user. That's why we don't have privileges to view other processes that are currently running. So just keep that in mind as you're operating. You need to have a firm grasp of what permission level you currently have because you're running underneath that user on the local machine. So the last command I'm going to run here is net local group administrators. I love to see who's an administrator on the local machine. You can see here we have 3 different types. We have our local administrator on the machine. That's common. You're going to see that on every machine. Although these machines are kind of joined to that central domain controller, they still have to have some local accounts. So you have that administrator account, and then it looks like this network has some level of separation of privilege. Instead of just one admin group that has access to everything, I see right here workstation admins, which again, I want you to see that Chicago keyword. That means that the workstation admins group belongs to the domain Chicago, which kind of jives and makes sense here. So we know they're separating privileges, right? We know there are admins that only work on workstations. That means they're probably not going to work on a domain controller. And then lastly here, like I mentioned, Rogue Arena is kind of a personal project of mine I'm hoping to build and bring to market. We still have the leftover Vagrant account. That's an Ansible account that was used to build out all these virtual machines. So still a legit admin. And honestly, in the real world, if there's any type of automation or imaging, you may be able to grab that cred and try to manipulate it and jump to other machines in the domain, right? Don't turn your eye to that. That might be something special that you can use later on. So I hope you enjoyed this quick situational awareness. Like I said, we're going to start digging into her files, seeing what we can find. We're going to start to expand, looking over the network at file servers and other information. So feel free to jump to the next scenario video directly, or if you're going through the whole RTFM and trying to get that RTFM challenge coin, feel free to go through the next video in the series.